In episode 3 of Mind Blend, I explored living life to the fullest with Urmi Hossein. She explained how courage and curiosity help her overcome uncertainty and live a more fulfilling life. True, life isn't always in our control. It throws us all kinds of curveballs and catches us off guard. So I'd like to dive into facing life's adversity and turning them into powerful lessons with my guest, Terry Tucker, today. Welcome to the show, Mind Blend. I'm your host, Karen Chong, and I'll be diving into the minds of incredible people, each an expert in their very own way. Together, we'll uncover insights and share ideas so you can be inspired and empowered to navigate your own unique journey in life. Ready to get curious and discover what's possible? Let's blend. Hi, Terry.
Karen, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you.
Welcome to the show. So, Terry, I'd like you to share a little bit with our listeners about who you are and what has been your journey.
Sure. So I grew up on the south side of Chicago, one of the larger cities here in the United States. I am the oldest of three boys. You can't tell this from looking at me or from my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall and actually went to college on a basketball scholarship. When I graduated from college, I moved home to find a job. Karen, I'm really going to date myself now, but this was long before the internet was available to help people find employment. I was very fortunate to find a job in the marketing department at the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain. That was the good news. The bad news was I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mother care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. After Wendy's, I actually went to work for the hospital that cared for my father and my grandmother. I thought they did such a great job that I wanted to be part of that. And then at 37, made a major pivot in my life and became a police officer. And part of what I did during my law enforcement career was I was a SWAT hostage negotiator. After that, I started a school security consulting business, coached girls high school basketball. And for the last 13 years, I've been battling a rare form of cancer, a rare form of melanoma. And then finally, my wife and I have been married for 32 years. We have one child, a daughter, who's in the military here in the United States.
Did you know that you're going to have such a winding career?
I didn't. I mean, opportunities presented themselves. And I'd always wanted to be in law enforcement, but my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. And in 1933, he was shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious injury. He was shot in the ankle. But my dad, who was an infant at the time, always remembered the stories growing up that my grandmother told with that knock on the door of Mrs. Tucker, grab your son, come with us, your husband's been shot. So when I expressed an interest in sort of following in my grandfather's footsteps, my dad was absolutely not. You're going to college, you're going to major in business, you're going to get out, get married, have 2.4 kids and live happily ever after. But that's the life my father wanted me to live. That's not the life I felt I was supposed to live. So I had a big choice right out of college. I could have said, hey, Dad, I know you're dying of cancer. Sorry about that. I'm going to do my own thing. Or out of love and respect for you, I will do what you want me to do. So sort of understanding that backstory, my resume makes a little bit more sense now. My first two jobs were in business because that's what my father wanted me to do. And I kind of joke, I did what every good son did. I waited till my father passed away and I followed my own dreams.
So you had wanted to be in law enforcement, and I'm glad you were finally able to do that because I'm also from a pretty traditional background and I know how it is to do what our parents want us to.
Yeah,
And
it's hard. I mean, you know that. And I knew my father was doing what he was doing out of love for me, not because he was trying to hurt me in any way. It was, I want something better for you. But honestly, Karen, it's one of the things I'm most proud of in my life is that I never let my dream die. I could have said, hey, I'm making good money. I'm a hospital administrator. I could have just stayed there. But certainly with the support of my family, I was able to do what I felt God put me on this earth to do, and that was to be in law enforcement.
And was it because of the cancer that made you leave the law enforcement?
Actually, it wasn't. It was my wife's job. My wife has always been the primary breadwinner in the house, and she lost her job. I was a police officer in Cincinnati, Ohio. She
Hmm.
lost her job, and she supported me. I mean, when she married me, I was a hospital administrator. And I said, hey, I want to give all that up and I want to work nights and I want to get shot at and I want to do all this kind of stuff. Will you support me in that? And she did.
Hmm.
And then it was time for me to support her when she lost her job and it was time to move to another city. So that I was a police officer. I really enjoyed doing that, but it wasn't who I was. My family, my faith, much more important than what I did for a living. So it was just a matter of supporting her and saying, okay, I'll find something else to do. I've got education, experience, background that I can find something else to earn a living at.
Hmm. Family support and the love is really important in supporting everyone's lives. And I'm sure it came in especially important when you were diagnosed with the condition, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
So sure, 2012, I was a girls' high school basketball coach, and I had a callus break open on the bottom of my foot, right below
Oh,
my
wow.
third.
Oh, my God.
I know. And initially, I didn't think much of it because as a coach, you're on your feet a lot. But after a few weeks of it not healing, I went to see a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine, and he took an X-ray and he said, "Terry, I think you got a cyst in there, and I can cut it out." And he did. And he showed it to me. It's just a little gelatin sac with some white fat in it, no dark spots, no blood, nothing that gave either one of us concern. But fortunately or unfortunately, he sent it off to pathology to have it looked at. And then 2 weeks later, I get the call from him. And as I said, he's a friend of mine. And the more difficulty he's having explaining to me what's going on, the more frightened I'm becoming. Until finally, he just laid it out for me, Karen. He said, "You know what, Terry? I've been a doctor for 25 years, and I have never seen the form of cancer that you have. You have an incredibly rare form of melanoma. Most people think of melanoma as too much exposure to the sun. It affects the melanin, the pigment in our skin. Mine has nothing to do with sun exposure. It's just a rare form that appears on the bottom of the feet or the palms of the hands. And because mine appeared on the bottom of my foot, he recommended I go to MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston to be treated. And I did. I had the bottom of my foot excised. I had all the lymph nodes in my groin removed. And then my doctor told me, you'll probably be dead in 2 years because we have nothing to offer you other than surgery.
Wow. Do you remember what went through your mind?
Yeah. I mean, my wife tells the story kind of better than I do. The
Mm.
oncologist, the doctor took her outside in the hall and she said, look, I've got to tell him that he's probably going to be dead in 2 years. How's he going to take this? And she just said, I just laughed at her and said, you have no idea who you're dealing with. So you go ahead and tell him that and see what he says. And,
Hmm.
and the way I felt about it, Karen, was, okay, you gave me a death sentence. Maybe I can try to turn that death sentence into a life sentence. And, doctors are I kind of look at them like, bookmakers or odds makers. They look at you and say, based on your age, your overall health, and the stage of your cancer, you are probably going to live X number of years or months or whatever. But
Hmm.
what doctors don't know is that you want to see your child graduate from high school or college, or you want to walk your daughter down the aisle, or you want to play with your grandkids. And having something to look forward to is incredibly powerful in keeping you going and keeping you moving forward. Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor during World War II, wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, talks about how when people lose the will to live, it's almost impossible to get that will back. And I was not going to be somebody who basically rolled over and said, well, a doctor said I'll be dead in 2 years. I'm going to be dead in 2 years. I've always wanted my life to be shaped by the decisions I made, not by the ones I didn't make or that somebody has made for me. But I also will say the opposite of that is true. I know people who the doctors have said, you will be dead in 6 months or you will be dead in a year. And literally on the date, on that 6 month anniversary, on that year anniversary, they die.
Wow.
I'm not one of those people. I'm going to have something to look forward to, and I'm going to try to keep moving forward.
Hmm. So one thing that I notice And listeners, unless you have met Terry, you wouldn't know that. When I first came across your picture, what made an impression was you just have this positivity in you, the smile that you have. Considering what you have gone through, I am very touched by that because I can just feel all the positivity that you exude.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Hmm. And it is really important. If you yourself is not does not have the will to continue, your body listens. Your body listens to you and will just follow suit.
Yeah, there's a great quote. I just ran across it recently, and it was something to the effect that every cell in your body is listening to the thoughts you have in your mind.
Hmm.
And that's so true, just what you said. It really, your mind controls your body. And if
Yeah.
you can't control your mind, it's going to be very hard. You're going to be very negative, you're going to be very down, you're going to be very
Hmm.
depressed. I've always learned, I learned early when I was like 15 years old, I had my first knee surgery, to control my mind, to control those thoughts, to put good things, just like your body. You put good fuel into your body will respond. Same thing with your mind. Put good things in your mind, it will respond as well.
Hmm. Control your mind or it will control you. That's one of the four truths that you have developed. Am I right?
Correct.
Would you like to elaborate more on these four truths?
Sure. So control your mind, or it will control you. There are four of them, and I have them here on a post-it note in my office. So I see them multiple times during the day, and they constantly get reinforced in my mind. So the first one is control your mind, or your mind will control you. The second one is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life, and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more resilient individual. The third one I look at kind of as a legacy type of truth, and it's this: what you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. And then the fourth one, the last one, is as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. And I kind of call these four truths sort of the bedrock of my soul. I just think they're a good place to start to try to build a quality life from.
The embracing your pain and help yourself become more resilient. I want to hear more about how someone can go about doing that because it is really hard to learn from the pain. Learning from mistakes, yes. But when you're suffering every day, you can't even get out of bed, it's really hard to be motivated. How did you use that to help you?
Absolutely. I mean, our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. So to the brain, the status quo, the way things are right now, hey, it's comfortable, it's familiar, just leave it alone. But we all know this. The only way you're going to grow, the only way you're going to get better, the only way you're going to improve in life is if you step outside your comfort zones and you do things that make you uncomfortable. When I was coaching girls' high school basketball, I used to constantly remind my players that they needed to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. So how do you do that? And I think it's fairly simple, but most people don't want to do it. And I do this every day of my life. So what I'm offering to your audience is not something that, hey, he doesn't do this, so why should I do it? I do this every day. Every day of your life, do at least one thing that scares you, that makes you nervous, that makes you uncomfortable, that's potentially embarrassing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. But if
Hmm.
you do those small things every day, when the big disasters in life hit us, and they hit all of us, we lose somebody who's close to us, we unexpectedly get let go from our job, we find out we have a chronic or a terminal illness, you will be much more resilient to handle those things than those people who never step outside their comfort zones, who never do anything that challenges them.
Hmm. Yeah, I am a big believer. The more adverse the environment is, the better you are at solving problems. You go outside of the box because you don't have the means, so you have to be creative about what you can do. You can't just throw money at a problem because if you don't have the means, you're not really solving a problem just by throwing money at it.
No, you're not. And that's, and sometimes no amount of money is going to help. It's,
Yeah.
you have to look, like you say, at things in a different way. what's the quote? If you do the same thing all the time, you're never going to get a different result. I mean, you have to find a different way to look at the problem, and that's not always easy. And I think it's much easier to do in an environment with people that are working on the same problem with you, as opposed to you just being the one who's like, well, I got to figure this out. Now, there are things in your life that nobody can help you with. You've got to figure out for yourself.
Mhm.
You've got to
Mhm.
figure out how you're going to deal with this adversity in your life. But if you want to do the same thing the same way all the time, it's going to be very hard to get different results because you're not changing up anything.
Mhm. Yeah. In your experience of battling cancer, m- do you mind if I ask if
Ask me anything.
you're are you finished with the treatment? So you're
No,
s-
I still have tumors in my lungs
mm,
that I am treated for. Used to be every 3 weeks, and now it's every 6 weeks.
mm-hmm,
So it's been 13 years now since I've had this disease,
mm-hmm,
and I've never been in remission. I've never been in treatment of some form or another. I had my foot amputated in 2018. I had my leg amputated in the middle of the COVID pandemic. And as
mm-hmm,
I said, I still have tumors in my lungs that I'm being treated for.
mm-hmm. What keeps you going?
My purpose.
Mm-hmm,
Um, uh, Two things: my purpose and what I call my three F's. And I honestly believe right now, Karen, I have a very strong faith in God, and I think at this point in my life, God is using my infirmity, my malignancy, to show people His love, His mercy, His grace, His peace, His comfort. And I remember when I had my leg amputated and I found out I had these tumors in my lungs, my doctor showed me my CAT scan.
mm-hmm,
And I have no medical background. I don't know how to read a CAT scan, but you could kind of look at it and be like, oh, that sure doesn't look like it belongs there. I had these big tumors in my lungs. I had fluid all around the pleural spaces in my lungs. And I remember looking at my doctor and saying, how was I alive? And I will never forget this till the day I die. He put his head down, he shook his head no, and then he looked up at me and he said, I don't know because you shouldn't have been. Which says to me that God's not done with me. When I die, where I die, how I die, way above my pay grade. I don't spend any time worrying about dying. I spend more time focused on how I can truly live my life. And the other thing that has gotten me through this is, like I said, what I call my three F's, which are faith, family, and friends. Very strong faith in God. I have a great family that has always supported me through this. And then I have a small but very loyal group of friends that is always there or is close enough that I can pick up the phone and talk to them when I'm having a bad day.
mm-hmm. Yeah, the support network. Again, it's very, very important. The cells in your body are important, but the support network definitely. Can you, so was there a flow time? I wanted to hear about the the cycle basically from when you started to have to battle when you found out. I'm sure there are ups and downs. Because I think that may be something that's interesting for our listeners so they can see how they can, if they're not comfortable with stepping out of their comfort zone, they may be able to learn something about how you were able to do it.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, when I was diagnosed, it was like, well, you'll be dead in 2 years. We don't have anything
Mm,
to offer you other than surgery. So, what my doctor did was put me on a drug called interferon. And as she said, Terry, this isn't a cure. We're just kicking the can down the road and trying to buy you more time. And I took a weekly interferon injection. And the side effects of the interferon were that I had terrible flu like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. And I took those weekly injections for almost 5 years. So imagine having a terrible case of the flu every week for 5 years. And as I said, my doctor's like, this isn't going to cure you. This isn't something, well, if you can endure this, it'll end up in the end curing you. It's not going to cure you. We're just buying you time. And there was a point, Karen, where I was like, I was so sick of being sick.
yeah.
I literally prayed to die. I wasn't considering suicide or anything like that, but I
Mm,
was like, all right, look, God, I feel there's two camps. There's the living and there's the not dying. And I'm in the not dying camp. I'm not really living.
Yeah.
I'm not contributing to my family. Sometimes a good day for me was literally getting out of bed and making it to the couch or the sofa. That was a good day. I mean, and for all your listeners, well, that's no big deal. Well, it was a big deal at that point in time. So I literally prayed. It's like, take me out of this, let me die and let my family get on with their life. Well, God didn't do that, obviously. God did, though, give me the strength to continue to go on. Eventually, the interferon became so toxic to my body that I ended up in the intensive care unit of the hospital with a body temperature of 108 degrees, which is usually not compatible with being alive. I mean, you're basically boiling your organs.
Yeah.
Somehow I survived that. And unfortunately, because the interferon was so toxic, I had to stop it. And the cancer came back almost immediately in the exact same part of my foot where it had presented 5 years earlier. And that necessitated in 2018 the amputation of my foot. The cancer worked its way up my leg in 2019, 2 more surgeries on my shin area. And then in 2020, in the middle of the COVID pandemic, I found out my entire lower leg, I had a tumor kind of in my ankle area that grew large enough that it fractured my tibia, it broke my leg, basically. And my only recourse in the COVID pandemic was to have my leg amputated, and I found out I had tumors in my lungs. And I've been on a clinical trial drug for the last little over 4 years now that does nothing to the cancer, but the way cancer proliferates in the body is that it secretes an enzyme or a protein that hides it from your own immune system. And what this drug does is go in and wipe out that protein or that enzyme so that my immune system, just like if you or I had a cold or a flu virus, your immune system would say, oh, that doesn't belong here. We need to attack it. It's my immune system that is attacking my cancer now and keeping the cancer pretty much contained and in a stable condition.
They got stronger too.
Yeah.
Your immune system. Yeah, I have lost friends to cancer. I have had cancer surviving friends too. They took it differently. I think I even had someone who chose euthanasia. So different people have different ways to battle cancer. And I wanted to ask you more about what you said about what you leave behind is what you weave in others' the hearts of others. I wanted to see what it personally means to you and what are some of the things that made you make that one of your truths.
I think it's incredibly important to leave something positive behind. And it's not for me, it's not being remembered. People, oh, how do you want to be remembered? I don't want to be remembered. 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember I was here at all. And that's okay with me. I don't really care about that. What I think is important, we had a children's talk show or children's television host here in the United States when I was growing up. A guy by the name of Fred Rogers, and he had a television show called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And he educated so many young people, including me, on public television. When Fred Rogers died in 2003, his family was going through his effects, and they found his wallet. And inside his wallet was a scrap piece of paper on which Mr. Rogers had written 4 simple words: life is for service. That's the legacy I think we leave behind. What do we offer to other people? How can we serve? How can we make a difference in people's lives? And I think that difference needs to be why we're here. Not, okay, after I die, here are the things I leave behind. There's a professor at the University of Chicago here in the United States that does this experiment with his students. The idea is you go out and you get on a bus, and in 3 questions, you go deep with somebody. So you get on a bus, sit down next to somebody. Hey, how you doing? I'm fine. How are you? Question 1. And I'm just making this up. Question 2, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a doctor. Okay. Question 3, have you always wanted to be a doctor? It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter their answer. They may say, no, I grew up on a farm and I wanted to be a veterinarian, but X, Y, and Z happened. Or my mother was a doctor and she died of breast cancer when she was 40, so I'm honoring her legacy by following in her footsteps. Whatever they tell you, now you understand their why, their mission, their purpose in life. Social media doesn't allow us to go deep with somebody. We stay on the surface. Everything's great. Everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true. It's not true in my life. It's not true in your life. It's not true in everybody's life. We have those down times. We have those bad times. That's okay. But going deep with somebody, that's the legacy that I want to leave. Can I help another human being? Can I, when I have my treatments, roll over to somebody who just sat down in the waiting room who has that kind of deer in headlights look like, oh my gosh, this is my first time here. I'm scared. Is this going to work? Is there going to be a lot of pain? They're just so overwhelmed. And just walking over, or for me, it's rolling in a wheelchair over and saying, hi, how you doing? I've been coming here for 4 years. These are the best nurses in the world. It's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. And that, you should see the transformation of those people. It's almost like somebody sees me. Somebody sees me as more than a cancer patient. They see me as a human being, as somebody who has value and worth.
Mm-hmm. Is that your motivation to write your book?
I never wanted to write a book. Never expected to write a book. Never really had any interest. There's sort of an old joke that says when we talk to God, it's called prayer. When God talks to us, it's called schizophrenia. So God has never talked to me, here, you should write a book.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what God did and has done previously in my life is put enough people in my path that start making the same suggestion. Terry should write a book.
Mm-hmm.
Terry should write a book. Terry should write a book. And I think I'm old enough now and more mature that I pay attention when those things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So my book, Sustainable Excellence, is really a book born out of two conversations I had. One was with a former player that I had coached in high school and moved to the area in the United States where my wife and I live with her fiance. And the four of us had dinner one night. And I remember saying to her after dinner that I was excited that she was living close and I could watch her find and live her purpose. And Karen, she got real quiet for a while. And then she looked at me and she said, well, Coach, what do you think my purpose is? I said, I have absolutely no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason or the reasons you were put on the face of this earth. And there is a reason, using your unique gifts and talents and then living that reason. And then the other conversation was with a young man who reached out to me on social media from college. And he said, what do you think are the most important things I need to learn, not to just be successful in my job or in business, but to be successful in life? And Karen, I didn't want to give him that. Get up early, work hard, help out. I didn't want to give sort of cliches.
You didn't give like the scripts or the prescription?
Exactly. I didn't want to do that with him. So I started taking some notes and came up with these 10 thoughts, these 10 ideas, these 10 principles. And so I sent them to him. And then I stepped back and I said, I've got a life story that fits underneath this principle, or I know somebody whose life emulates that principle. So literally during the 4 to 5 month period where I was healing after I had my leg amputated, I sat down at the computer and I built stories, and they're real stories about real people underneath each of the principles. And that's how Sustainable Excellence came to be.
Mm-hmm. Would you say your experience as the hostage negotiator helped you understand people and it enabled you to kind of read deeper into people?
Yes. I think my overall experience as a police officer, specifically as a hostage negotiator, absolutely. I mean, we learned different techniques, to talk to people. And I think that's one of if you want to be successful in law enforcement, you need to be able to talk to all kinds of people. And
exactly,
especially in the United States, law enforcement isn't a career that's very desirable today, but every now and then I'll get somebody that'll reach out and say, hey, what do you recommend? And I always tell them, put your devices down and go out on the street and talk to the homeless man, and go up to the penthouse and talk to that person. Because if you can talk to a wide range of people, you can be successful at that job. If the only way you can communicate is on that little box that we all carry in our pockets, you're going to be miserable being a cop.
Yeah, it just doesn't work.
It doesn't.
You may die, or whoever you're chasing after will have gone already.
Right.
Wow, there's so many things that we can take away from our conversations. If you were to sum up the takeaways that you want the listeners to go away with, what would they be?
From the four truths, I would say this. And this is, I'm going to give you a line from a book called Farewell to Arms, written by Ernest Hemingway, which is kind of a semi-autobiographical book about his time as an ambulance driver for the Italian army during World War I. And the line is this: life breaks everyone, and afterward, many are stronger at the broken places. So understand that I don't care how strong, tough, whatever you are, life is going to break you. But if you can keep moving forward, if you can keep being positive, if you can keep trying, you will come out the other end of that a stronger and more determined individual.
Mm-hmm. It's like steel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Iron sharpens iron. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Terry. It's even more fascinating than when I was preparing for this conversation. Like it's really amazing how you can turn all the hardships, pain into something so positive and helping others. And we need more of that human connection, just humanizing everyone in our world nowadays.
Well, Karen, thanks for having me on. I'm really glad you enjoyed this, and I hope our conversation makes a positive difference in your audience. And I always look at it, if it does, today's been a good day.
Yeah. Like I'm sure. Having heard from someone like you, people can't complain about their days, really. Right? Yeah. And
I can always complain,
I'm really, really fascinated by how positive you can stay. And God bless you.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Mind Blend. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to follow and share it with anyone who needs to hear it. And let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on LinkedIn or leave me a comment. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and let's continue to blend our minds and discover what's possible.